She traveled 1,000 miles with 2 babies and a promise of marriage. But when she stepped off that train, her future husband took one look at her children and said words that would haunt her forever. "You brought another man's leavings." He rejected her publicly, humiliated her in front of the entire town, left her stranded in a frozen territory with no money, no ticket home, and a secret that could get her killed. But what this cruel man did not know was that she was not just a desperate widow. She was a woman with a hidden gun, a dangerous past, and a ledger full of names that powerful men would kill to destroy. And the quiet doctor watching from across the street? He had secrets of his own, secrets that would change everything. This story will show you that your darkest moment can become the beginning of your greatest chapter, that the people who reject you are simply clearing the path for those who will fight for you. Sometimes life breaks us down not to destroy us, but to rebuild us stronger. Eliza lost everything: her husband, her home, her hope. But in that frozen town where she was rejected and abandoned, she found something she never expected. A partner who saw her strength when she was pretending to be weak. A family built not from blood, but from courage and sacrifice. This story reminds us that scars are not signs of defeat. They are proof that we survived, and surviving is the greatest victory of all. If you believe that love can rise from the ashes and that second chances are worth fighting for, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join our Frontier family. Drop a comment and tell us, have you ever found hope in your darkest moment? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that their rejection might just be their redirection. And if this tale touches your heart, smash that like button so we know to bring you more stories where courage meets love and the broken become whole. Now settle in, partner. This ride is just getting started. The train arrived in Riverbend at 3 minutes past noon, carrying 6 passengers, 14 crates of supplies, and one woman who had already decided which man she might have to kill. Eliza Catherine Moore clutched her twins against her chest as the locomotive shuddered to a stop. Steam hissed from the wheels, mixing with the snow that fell in thick white curtains across the Dakota Territory. She had been traveling for 12 days. 12 days of hard wooden benches, crying babies, and the constant fear that someone was watching her. Someone was. She had noticed him on the second day out of Kansas City. A man in a black duster coat who sat 3 rows back and never seemed to sleep. He watched her with eyes that reminded her of a hawk tracking a rabbit across an open field. She pretended not to notice. She was good at pretending. Emma squirmed in her left arm, letting out a small cry of protest against the cold. Thomas, her twin brother, remained silent, as always, studying the world with serious gray eyes that seemed far too old for an 8-month-old baby. He had his father's eyes. The thought sent a knife through her heart. The platform was crowded with people bundled against the bitter wind. Eliza scanned the faces, searching for the man she had come to meet. Silas Pierce, wealthy merchant, respected citizen, her ticket to a new life. At least that was what his letters had promised. She spotted him immediately. He stood apart from the common folk, dressed in a fine wool coat with a gold watch chain glinting at his vest. 2 armed men flanked him, which struck her as unusual for a simple merchant. His smile was wide and practiced the smile of a man who was used to getting what he wanted. That smile froze the moment he saw the babies. Eliza stepped down from the train car, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. She walked toward him with her chin held high despite the trembling in her legs. She had come too far to show weakness now. Silas Pierce did not move to greet her. Instead, he stood rooted to the spot, his eyes fixed on Emma and Thomas, with an expression that shifted from surprise to disgust in the space of a heartbeat. "You brought children," he said. His voice was loud enough for everyone on the platform to hear. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Eliza felt the weight of a dozen stares pressing down on her. "I wrote to you about them," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You said in your letter that you understood. You said it would not be a problem. Silas waved his hand dismissively as if swatting away a fly. "I said I wanted a wife, not another man's leavings." The words hit her like a physical blow. Around her, the crowd began to whisper. She heard fragments of conversation. Poor thing. Should have known better. What kind of woman travels alone with babies? "My children are not a trick, Mr. Pierce," she said. "They are all I have." Silas's lip curled. "Then you have very little, Mrs. Moore. I suggest you find yourself passage back to wherever you came from. This arrangement is concluded." He turned and walked away without another word. His armed men followed, casting looks back at her that held no sympathy, only cold amusement. The crowd began to disperse, leaving Eliza standing alone on the platform, with snow gathering on her shoulders, and her babies beginning to cry. She had no money for a return ticket. She had no family waiting for her anywhere. She had burned every bridge and spent every penny to get to this frozen piece of nowhere, and now she stood with nothing but 2 hungry infants and a bag full of secrets that men would kill for. The man in the black duster stepped off the train behind her. He did not approach. He simply watched from a distance, making no effort to hide his interest. Eliza felt ice form in her stomach that had nothing to do with the weather. Then a hand touched her elbow. "You need warmth," a woman's voice said. "And food. Come with me." Eliza turned to find an older woman standing beside her. She was broad-shouldered and plainly dressed with iron-gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her face was weathered by years of hard living, but her eyes held something that Eliza had not expected to find in this place. Kindness. "I am Mabel Garrison," the woman said. "I own the boarding house down the street. You look like you could use a friend." Eliza hesitated. Trust did not come easily to her anymore. But the twins were crying, and the cold was seeping into her bones, and she had nowhere else to go. "Thank you," she whispered. Mabel guided her away from the platform and the staring eyes. As they walked, Eliza glanced back and saw Silas Pierce standing in the alley beside the general store. The man in the black duster had joined him. They were talking in low voices and looking directly at her. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Even from this distance, Eliza recognized what it was. A wanted poster. Her wanted poster. She turned away and kept walking, her heart pounding against her ribs. They had not found her by accident. They had been waiting. The boarding house was warm and clean and smelled of fresh bread and wood smoke. Mabel settled Eliza by the fire and brought her tea without asking questions. When Eliza set down her bag, her shawl shifted, revealing the slight bulge of the Derringer pistol hidden in the false bottom of her diaper bag. Mabel noticed. Her eyes flickered to the weapon and then back to Eliza's face. She said nothing. "In this town," Mabel said quietly, "everyone is running from something." That night, Eliza lay awake in the small room Mabel had given her. The twins slept peacefully in a drawer she had lined with blankets, their small chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. She watched them and thought about Samuel. Her husband had been a good man, a doctor who believed in truth and justice and all the things that got good men killed. He had discovered something terrible, a network of men who stole land through fraud and murder, men who operated in the shadows and left bodies in their wake. Samuel had wanted to expose them. Eliza had pushed him to do it. She had been so certain that the truth would set them free. Instead, it had gotten him killed. Now she carried the evidence of their crimes in her bag. A ledger filled with names and dates and payments. Proof that could bring down powerful men. Proof that had made her a target. She had come to Riverbend because one of those names was Silas Pierce. She had answered his advertisement for a mail-order bride not because she wanted a husband, but because she wanted answers. She wanted to know who had ordered her husband's death. And then she wanted revenge. A sound outside her window made her freeze. Voices, low and urgent. She crept to the glass and peered through the frost. In the alley below, Silas Pierce stood with the man in the black duster. They were looking up at the boarding house. The man handed Silas a piece of paper. Even in the dim light, Eliza could see her own face staring back from that poster. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, her breath fogging the view. They knew who she was. They knew what she carried. And they would come for her. The only question was when. Caleb Hart had 3 rules for survival in Riverbend. Do not touch a gun, do not talk about Texas, and never under any circumstances let yourself care about someone who could be taken from you. He had broken 2 of those rules already this morning. The ranch hand on his operating table was named Billy Warren, a young man barely 20 with a hole in his side from a bull's horn and fear in his eyes that made him look even younger. Caleb worked with steady hands, cleaning the wound and stitching the torn flesh, while Billy's friends paced nervously in the waiting room. The surgery took an hour. When it was done, Caleb stepped back and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His hands began to tremble. It always happened this way. During the work, he was calm and focused. His fingers moved with precision, his mind clear of everything except the task before him. But when it was over, the memories came rushing back. Gunfire, screaming, a small hand going limp in his. He gripped the edge of the table and closed his eyes. The smell of blood filled his nostrils, but it was not Billy's blood he was smelling. It was older blood. The blood of his wife and son spilled on a dirt floor 3 years ago while he was 100 miles away chasing outlaws across the Mexican border. He had been a Texas Ranger then. They called him the surgeon because of his precision with a pistol. He never missed. He never hesitated. He was the best shot in the company, and he had been so proud of that skill until he learned what it cost. The Comancheros had come for his family as a message. Stay away from our business or we will take everything you love. By the time he got home, there was nothing left but ashes and graves. He had buried his badge with them. Caleb opened his eyes and looked at his reflection in the mirror above the wash basin. Dark circles under bloodshot eyes. Hair uncombed. The face of a man who had stopped caring whether he lived or died. He washed his hands longer than necessary, scrubbing until his skin turned red. Then he went to check on his patient. Billy Warren was sleeping peacefully. The wound would heal. He would live. It should have felt like a victory, but all Caleb could think about was the locked drawer in his desk, the one that held his Colt .45, his Ranger badge, and a wanted poster that had arrived last week from a lawman friend in Kansas. Wanted, Eliza Moore, for the murder of Dr. Samuel Moore. $500 reward. The woman from the depot, the one Silas Pierce had rejected so publicly yesterday. Caleb had watched the whole scene from the window of his office. He had seen the way she held those babies, the way she refused to cry or beg, the way her eyes scanned the crowd with a sharpness that most people would miss. He recognized that look. It was the look of someone who had learned to survive. According to his friend in Kansas, she had not killed her husband. The real killers were connected to a network of land grabbers that operated across 3 territories. The same network that had hired the Comancheros who murdered his family. The same network that Silas Pierce worked for. Caleb should have turned her in. Instead, he had done nothing. He told himself it was because he wanted more information. He told himself it was professional curiosity. He was lying to himself. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Mabel Garrison standing on his porch with the woman from the wanted poster beside her. "She needs work," Mabel said without preamble. "She has medical training. Her babies need feeding, and I am not running a charity house." Caleb looked at Eliza Moore. Up close, she was younger than he had expected. Pretty in a tired sort of way, with dark hair pulled back in a simple braid, and eyes the color of strong coffee. She held the twins against her chest like they were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. She met his gaze without flinching. Most people looked away when he stared at them. She did not. "What kind of training?" he asked. "I assisted my husband," she said. "He was a physician in Kansas. I can suture wounds, prepare medications, monitor patients. I have seen surgery. I have held men down while bones were set." Her voice was steady, but he noticed the slight hesitation before she mentioned her husband. The careful way she said was, instead of is. He knew she was lying about how Samuel Moore died. The question was why. "Your husband," he said. "How did he die?" "Fever," she said. "Last spring." Caleb studied her face. She was good at hiding her emotions, but not good enough. "Come back tomorrow morning," he said. "We will see how you do." Mabel nodded and guided Eliza away. As they walked down the street, Caleb noticed something that made his blood run cold. Jake Reed was watching them from the saloon across the way. The scar on his jaw caught the morning light as he smiled that cold, empty smile that Caleb remembered all too well. Jake had been his partner once, his mentor, his brother in all the ways that mattered. They had ridden together for 8 years, hunting outlaws and dispensing frontier justice. Jake had taught him to shoot. Jake had been there the day he found his family's bodies. Jake had held him back when he tried to put a bullet in his own head. Then Caleb had left. He had walked away from the Rangers and the violence and the endless killing. He had not said goodbye. He had not explained. He had just disappeared, and Jake had never forgiven him. Now Jake worked for Silas Pierce. He led the crew of gunmen who enforced Pierce's will across the territory. He had become everything they had once sworn to fight against. And he was looking at Eliza Moore like a wolf looks at a wounded deer. Caleb went back inside and locked the door. He stood in his empty office and listened to the silence. Then he walked to his desk and opened the locked drawer. The Colt gleamed in the dim light. He had not touched it in 3 years, had not cleaned it or loaded it or even looked at it. He had tried to convince himself that man was dead, the surgeon, the killer, the ranger who never missed. He picked up the wanted poster and stared at Eliza's face. She was running from the same people who had destroyed his life. She was carrying evidence that could bring them down. And she had no idea that the danger was so much closer than she realized. "What are you running from, Mrs. Moore?" he whispered to the empty room. "And what happens when it catches up?" He put the poster back and closed the drawer. But he did not lock it this time. Some questions he had learned were better answered by watching than asking. Jake Reed rode into Riverbend, the way death rides into a sick room. Quiet, inevitable, impossible to ignore. 6 horses came down the main street at noon, their hooves kicking up clouds of dust that mixed with the falling snow. The townspeople scattered like quail before a hawk. Shopkeepers locked their doors. Mothers pulled their children inside. Even the dogs seemed to sense the danger, slinking into alleys and hiding under porches. Jake led the procession, sitting tall in the saddle with his gray eyes scanning the street like a general surveying a battlefield. The scar across his jaw was a pale line against his weathered skin. He wore 2 pistols on his hips and carried a rifle across his saddle. His men were similarly armed. They looked like what they were: professional killers. They stopped in front of the doctor's office. Eliza was inside arranging medical supplies on the shelves when she heard the horses. She moved to the window and felt her stomach drop at the sight of those cold eyes. "Who are they?" she asked. Caleb did not look up from the patient chart he was reviewing. "Trouble," he said. The door opened without a knock. Jake Reed stepped inside, filling the small room with his presence. He looked around, taking in the neat rows of medicine bottles and the examination table, and the 2 cribs in the corner where Emma and Thomas slept peacefully. His eyes settled on Eliza. "Well, well," he said. "The surgeon himself. Never thought I would find you playing nursemaid to farmers." Caleb set down his pen and turned to face his former partner. His face was carefully blank, but Eliza noticed the way his hands had gone still, the way his shoulders tensed beneath his coat. "What do you want, Jake?" Jake smiled, that cold, empty smile. "One of my boys took a bullet during a hunting accident. Need you to patch him up." He gestured, and 2 of his men carried a third through the door. The wounded man was pale and sweating, with blood seeping through a makeshift bandage on his shoulder. Eliza could tell at a glance that the bullet was still inside. "Put him on the table," she said before she could stop herself. Jake's attention snapped to her. His eyes narrowed, studying her face with unsettling intensity. "You look familiar," he said. "Have we met?" Eliza's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. I do not believe so. Jake did not look convinced, but he let it pass. He watched as Caleb and Eliza worked on his man. Caleb removed the bullet with practiced efficiency while Eliza cleaned the wound and prepared the sutures. They moved together like they had been doing this for years, anticipating each other's needs without speaking. She is good, Jake observed. Where did you find her? She is my nurse, Caleb said without looking up. If you want your man treated, let her work. When the surgery was done, Jake's man was sleeping peacefully on the table. Jake pulled a roll of bills from his pocket and tossed them on the desk. Put it on Pierce's account, he said. Then he looked at Eliza again. That same probing stare. Pierce knows she is here. He is curious about what she brought with her. Might want to think about that. He walked out without another word. His men followed, leaving behind the smell of leather and gun oil and violence. Eliza released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Who was that, she asked. Caleb was washing his hands in the basin. His movements were slow and deliberate, like he was trying to calm himself. His name is Jake Reed, he said. We used to ride together. Before. Before what? Before I became someone else. That evening, Eliza sat in the kitchen of the boarding house trying to feed Emma, while Thomas watched from his high chair with those serious eyes. Mabel bustled around the stove preparing dinner and pretending not to notice that Eliza had barely touched her own food. The doctor seems like a decent man, Mabel said casually. Most folks around here trust him. Eliza did not respond. She was thinking about the way Caleb had looked at her when Jake mentioned Pierce, the way his jaw had tightened, the way something dark had flickered in his eyes. He has secrets, she said finally. Mabel laughed. Honey, everyone in this town has secrets. Question is whether they are the kind that will get you killed. Later that night, Eliza could not sleep. She left the twins with Mabel and walked through the dark streets to the doctor's office. She did not know why she felt compelled to go there. Maybe she just needed answers. The light was still on. She knocked softly and heard Caleb's voice telling her to come in. He was sitting at his desk with a cold cup of coffee in front of him, staring at nothing. He did not seem surprised to see her. Could not sleep, she said. He shook his head. Nightmares. She understood. She had them too. Who was he really, she asked. That man today. Jake Reed. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, he was my partner when I was a Texas Ranger. We rode together for 8 years. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. You were a ranger. For a long time, yes. I was good at it. They called me the surgeon because I never missed. Then my wife and son were murdered by men I was hunting, and I realized that all my skill had not protected the people I loved. So I walked away. His voice was flat and emotionless. But Eliza could hear the pain beneath the words. She recognized it because she felt the same pain every day. I am sorry, she said. Do not be. It was a long time ago. He looked at her then, and his eyes were sharp and knowing. Everyone comes to Riverbend running from something, Mrs. Moore. What are you running from? She should have lied. She should have given him the same story she had told everyone else. But something in his face made her want to tell the truth. My husband, she said. He was killed. Not by fever. By men who wanted what he had discovered. What did he discover? A network. Men who steal land through fraud and murder. They operate across 3 territories. My husband found proof. A ledger with names and dates and payments. They killed him for it. Caleb leaned forward. Do you have this ledger? Eliza hesitated. Then she nodded. Silas Pierce, she said. His name is in it. Something changed in Caleb's face. A hardness settled over his features like a mask being lowered into place. I know, he said. I have been watching Pierce for 2 years. He is connected to the same people who killed my family. Eliza stared at him. The same people. The same network. The same methods. The same money. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. I came here to find evidence, to bring them down, but I have been hiding, pretending to be someone I am not, afraid to become what I was. And now you show up with exactly what I need. A ledger full of proof. He turned to face her. The question is whether I can trust you, whether you are a victim or a plant sent by Pierce to flush me out. I am not working for Pierce, Eliza said fiercely. He killed my husband. He destroyed my family. I want him dead. Want him. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I believe you, he said. But we need to be careful. Jake Reed is dangerous, and Pierce has eyes everywhere in this town. What do we do? For now, we wait, we watch, we gather information, and when the time is right, we strike. Eliza nodded. For the first time since Samuel's death, she felt something other than fear and grief. She felt hope. The next morning, a riderless horse trotted into the center of town. Strapped to the saddle was the body of a man, Ben Hollister, a farmer who had refused to sell his land to Silas Pierce. Pinned to his chest was a note written in a careful hand. The doctor cannot save everyone. The woman knows why. Eliza read those words and felt the hope she had felt last night turn to ash in her mouth. Pierce knew. He knew about the ledger. He knew about her. And he was sending a message. This is just the beginning, Caleb said quietly. He is testing us, seeing how we react. What do we do? Eliza asked. Caleb looked at the body, then at the crowd of frightened townspeople, then at Eliza. We do not react, he said. We prepare. The men came for her at midnight. They expected a frightened widow. They found something else entirely. Eliza woke to the sound of footsteps on the stairs, 2 sets of boots, heavy, moving slowly, trying to be quiet but failing. She had been sleeping with the derringer under her pillow since Kansas. Her hand closed around the grip before her eyes were fully open. The twins were in their drawer beside the bed. Emma stirred but did not wake. Thomas opened his eyes and looked at his mother with that serious gaze that always made her heart ache. Shh, she whispered. Mama will handle this. The door creaked open. 2 men stepped into the room. They wore bandanas over their faces, but she recognized the build of one of them. He had been with Jake Reed in the doctor's office. She had seconds to decide. She chose to scream. It was a calculated performance. Loud and terrified and helpless. She grabbed the twins and backed into the corner, clutching them to her chest like a shield. Please, she cried, please do not hurt my babies. The men hesitated. They had expected resistance, perhaps, but not this. Not a hysterical woman with crying infants. What they did not see was that she had positioned herself near the window. An escape route. Her bag with the ledger was in her other hand, and the derringer was cocked beneath the blanket covering Emma. Shut her up, one of the men hissed. Find the papers. The other man moved toward her dresser and started pulling open drawers. He tossed clothes onto the floor, rifled through her belongings, growing more frustrated with each passing second. Where is it? He demanded. I do not know what you are talking about, Eliza sobbed. Please just take whatever you want and leave us alone. A crash from downstairs, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Then Caleb burst through the door with a rifle in his hands. Get away from her, he said. His voice was low and deadly. The intruders exchanged a look. Then they ran, out the window and into the night like shadows fleeing the dawn. Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands were on her shoulders. His eyes searched her face. Are you hurt? No. She was shaking now, the adrenaline flooding her system. We are fine. He helped her to her feet and noticed several things at once. Her hands were not trembling anymore. Her breathing had already returned to normal, and there was a derringer-shaped bulge pressed against her thigh beneath the baby blanket. He said nothing, but she saw the understanding in his eyes. The next morning, Caleb confronted her in his office. The twins were asleep in their cribs and Mabel had gone to the market. They were alone. They were not random thieves, he said. They were looking for something specific. What do they want from you? Eliza looked at him for a long moment, then she made a decision. My husband, she said. He did not just discover the network. He documented everything, names, dates, payments. It is all in a ledger that I've been carrying since Kansas. Silas Pierce wants it because his name is in it. Where is it now? Safe. Nowhere is safe if Pierce wants it. She knew he was right. She had been running for months, and they had found her anyway. They would keep finding her. I need to show you something, she said. She went to her bag and retrieved the ledger from its hiding place in the false bottom. She had not opened it since leaving Kansas. Looking at Samuel's handwriting was too painful. She handed it to Caleb and watched his face as he flipped through the pages. He went still. "What is it?" she asked. He showed her a page near the middle. Two names written in Samuel's careful script. S. Pierce, Riverbend Territory. C. Hart, witness fee paid. Eliza felt her blood turn to ice. "That is your name," she said. "You're in the ledger." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I can explain." "Then explain." He set the ledger down and met her eyes. 5 years ago, I was investigating a land grabber in Texas. He was part of the same network. I testified against him at trial. The witness fee was standard payment from the court. It had nothing to do with Pierce or the conspiracy. How do I know that is true? You do not. But think about it. If I was working with Pierce, why would I help you? Why would I hire you? Why would I care what happens to you and your children? Eliza wanted to believe him. Every instinct she had was telling her to trust him. But she had trusted before, and it had gotten Samuel killed. "There is something else," Caleb said. "Something I should have told you from the beginning." "What?" "I know who you are. I have known since you stepped off the train." She froze. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a piece of paper, a wanted poster. Her face stared back at her above the words, "Murder of Dr. Samuel Moore, $500 reward. A lawman friend in Kansas sent me this," he explained. "But he also sent other information. He told me you were framed, that the real killers were connected to a network that spans 3 territories, the same network that hired the Comancheros who murdered my wife and son." Eliza could not breathe. "You knew," she whispered, "this whole time." "I needed to be sure you were not a plant. Pierce has been waiting for something. When you arrived, I thought maybe he had brought you here to flush me out, but I watched you. I saw how you held your children, how you refused to break when Pierce rejected you, how you kept that derringer hidden even when you were pretending to be helpless." He stepped closer. "I know a survivor when I see one, Mrs. Moore, and I know you are not my enemy." The tears came before she could stop them. She had been holding them back for so long, months of running, months of fear, months of carrying the weight of Samuel's death on her shoulders. Caleb did not reach for her. He simply stood there solid and steady and let her cry. When the tears finally stopped, she wiped her eyes and looked at him. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we work together. We find a way to bring Pierce down, and we make them pay for everyone they have hurt." That evening, news arrived that another homestead had been burned. The Gundersons, a family of 7. The children had been inside when the fire started. Caleb and Eliza rode out together to help. The scene was worse than she had imagined. The farmhouse was a smoking ruin. The mother sat in the dirt staring at nothing while her husband raged at the men who had come too late. Pierce said if we did not sign over by Saturday, it would be the house next time, the farmer said. With us inside. I did not believe him. I thought no man could be that evil. Eliza treated the children's burns. Her hands were gentle, and her voice was soothing. But inside she was burning with an anger she had not felt since the night Samuel died. She looked at those frightened faces. She thought about Emma and Thomas. She thought about all the families Pierce had destroyed and would continue to destroy unless someone stopped him. She could not run anymore. If she ran, Pierce won. Other families would suffer. Other children would cry in the ashes of their homes. "I am done hiding," she told Caleb as they rode back to town. "I am done being afraid. Whatever it takes, I want Pierce to pay for what he has done." Caleb looked at her and nodded. "Then we make a plan," he said, "and we see it through to the end." Caleb Hart had proposed to a woman once before on a spring morning in San Antonio. She had said yes with tears in her eyes. This time the proposal came with guns at the door and blood in the air. Sheriff Wyatt McCall arrived at the doctor's office just after dawn. He was a decent man, caught in an impossible situation. His face was apologetic, but his hand rested on his pistol. "Mrs. Moore," he said, "I have a warrant for your arrest." Eliza felt the floor drop out from beneath her feet. "On what charge?" "Theft. Silas Pierce claims you stole jewelry from his home. He has witnesses." "Paid witnesses," Caleb said. His voice was cold. Probably the sheriff admitted quietly. "But the law is the law, Doc. I have to take her in." Eliza understood immediately what Pierce was doing. A theft charge would allow them to search her belongings. They would find the ledger. Once they had it, she would disappear into some territorial prison and never be seen again. "Give me 1 hour," Caleb said. "I cannot do that. 1 hour, then I will bring her to you myself." The sheriff hesitated. He looked at Eliza, at the twins sleeping in their cribs, at Caleb standing between him and the woman he had come to arrest. 1 hour, he said finally. Then he turned and walked out. The moment the door closed, Caleb turned to Eliza. "Marry me," he said. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What? A husband has legal authority over his wife's property and debts. If we are married, any claim Pierce makes goes through me. I can refuse to let them search without proper evidence. A wife cannot be compelled to testify against her husband." Eliza's mind raced. It was tactical, strategic, cold. But there was something else in his voice, something that made her heart skip. "Why would you do this?" she asked. Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I could not save my family. I have spent 3 years hiding from that failure, pretending to be someone I am not. But I am done hiding." He met her eyes. "Let me protect yours. If I say yes and you betray me, then you can use that derringer you think I do not know about." Despite everything, a smile tugged at her lips. "You knew. Since day one. You move like someone who has survived a fight. I just needed to know which side you were on." She looked at him. This man who had lost everything just as she had. This man who was offering her safety and partnership and maybe something more. "Yes," she said. "I will marry you." The ceremony took place that evening in Mabel Garrison's parlor. There were no flowers, no music, no celebration. Just necessity and determination, and 2 people bound together by circumstances neither of them had chosen. Judge Harlan performed the ceremony. Mabel and Captain Owen Pike stood as witnesses. Outside, Jake Reed's men watched the building. They could hear horses pacing in the street. Caleb's hands were steady as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It was a simple gold band. His mother's ring. The last piece of his old life that he had kept. "Caleb Hart, take you Eliza Moore to be my wife," he said. "In sickness and in health, in danger and in peace, until death do us part." Eliza's voice did not waver as she repeated her vows. She was not promising love, not yet. She was promising partnership, alliance, mutual survival. But when Caleb kissed her, she felt something shift between them. It was brief and chaste, a kiss for legality. But when they pulled apart, his hand lingered on her waist a moment longer than necessary. Sheriff McCall returned an hour later. He had paperwork in his hands and frustration on his face. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "the charges have been complicated by your marriage. Pierce will have to refile with new evidence." "Then we have time," Caleb said. The sheriff nodded. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but he just tipped his hat and left. That night, Eliza and Caleb sat in his office. The twins were asleep. The town was quiet, but neither of them could rest. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait for Pierce to make his next move, and we figure out who else in that ledger is still alive to testify. And if they are all dead, then we are the only ones left. And that makes us very valuable or very dangerous." A sound at the door made them both freeze, something sliding across the floor. Eliza picked up the piece of paper that had been pushed underneath. It was a note written in elegant script. "Congratulations on the wedding. The twins are beautiful. Enjoy them while you can. S.P." Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. She handed the note to Caleb and watched his expression harden. "He knows," she whispered. "He has always known. This is just the beginning. What do? We do what we should have done from the start." Caleb stood and walked to his desk. He opened the locked drawer and pulled out his Colt 45. The metal gleamed in the lamplight. "We stop hiding. We stop running. And we fight back." Eliza looked at the gun. She thought about Samuel, about Emma and Thomas, about all the people Pierce had hurt. She thought about the woman she used to be, the daughter of a cavalry surgeon who could shoot and ride and treat battlefield wounds, the woman who had killed 2 men in Kansas defending her home. She had been hiding that woman for months, playing a role, pretending to be weak. Not anymore. "Teach me," she said. "Everything you know. I want to be ready when they come." Caleb looked at her with something like admiration in his eyes. "Are you sure? I am done being afraid. I am done letting other people fight my battles. Whatever happens next, I want to face it on my feet." He nodded slowly. "Then we start tomorrow. We do not have much time." He was right. They did not. 24 hours. That was how long Pierce gave them. 24 hours to hand over the ledger or watch Riverbend burn. The rider delivered the ultimatum in the middle of Main Street at high noon. He was one of Jake Reed's men, young and arrogant with the swagger of someone who had never faced real consequences. "Mr. Pierce requests the return of his stolen property by sundown tomorrow," he announced to the gathered crowd. The alternative would be unfortunate for everyone. Fear spread through the town like wildfire. People whispered in doorways and behind curtains. Some blamed Eliza for bringing this trouble. Others simply packed their belongings and prepared to flee. Captain Owen Pike stepped forward from the crowd. He was 62 years old with a wooden leg from Gettysburg and a spine made of iron. "I have faced Confederate artillery and Sioux war parties," he said. "I will be damned if I run from a banker with hired guns." But he was one old man, and Pierce had an army. Caleb called a meeting that afternoon. 5 people gathered in his office with the doors locked and the curtains drawn. Eliza, Mabel, Captain Pike, and Thomas Whitmore, the lawyer who had served Silas Pierce for 15 years. Whitmore was a thin, nervous man with spectacles that he constantly adjusted. He had come to Caleb 3 months ago with information about Pierce's activities. Now he was ready to tell everything. "I have been documenting his crimes for years," he said. "Land theft, extortion, murder. It is all in my records. I will testify. But there is a condition." "What condition?" Caleb asked. "My daughter, Clara. She works at Pierce's ranch. He keeps her there to ensure my loyalty. I need her safe before I say a word." "We will get her out," Eliza said. "I promise." Whitmore looked at her with desperate hope. "You do not understand. The ranch is a fortress, 20 men at least. And Pierce is bringing more from Denver, a gunfighter named Victor Crane. They say he has killed more than 30 men. "We will find a way," Caleb said. "Tell us everything you know about the ranch, guards, routines, weaknesses." Whitmore spent the next hour drawing maps and explaining patrol schedules. By the time he finished, they had a rough plan. It was dangerous, maybe suicidal, but it was the only chance they had. That afternoon, Eliza found a moment of peace. She was bathing the twins in a basin of warm water while Caleb watched from the doorway. Emma splashed and laughed. Thomas handed Caleb a wooden block with the solemnity of a judge passing sentence. Caleb knelt beside the tub and made faces at Emma until she shrieked with delight. For a moment he looked young, free of the weight he always carried. "You are good with them," Eliza said. "Billy loved bath time," Caleb said quietly. He used to pretend he was a riverboat captain. He had not spoken his son's name aloud in 3 years. The word hung in the air between them. "What happened to them was not your fault," Eliza said gently. I was not there. Neither was I when Samuel died. I have spent months believing I killed him by wanting the truth. Caleb looked at her. Did you pull the trigger? No. Then you did not kill him. The men who pulled the trigger killed him. Same as the men who killed my family. We do not get to carry their sins. Eliza reached out and touched his hand. It was the first time she had initiated contact between them. His skin was warm. His fingers curled around hers. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said, I want you to know that I do not regret coming here. I do not regret meeting you. Neither do I. They stayed like that for a long moment. Two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their lives. Two people who might not survive the next 24 hours. Then Emma splashed water in Caleb's face, and the moment broke into laughter. The sun was setting when Jake Reed came. Eliza had stepped outside to empty the wash water. She did not see the men until they were on her. A hand over her mouth, a cloth pressed to her face, the sweet chemical smell of chloroform filling her lungs. She fought. She reached for the Derringer in her pocket, but the drug was already taking hold. The world blurred and darkened. The last thing she heard was Jake Reed's voice. Pierce wants to have a conversation. When she woke, she was in a wagon. Her hands were bound. The world was moving around her in a blur of shadows and moonlight. Jake Reed sat across from her, watching with those cold gray eyes. Do not bother screaming, he said. We are miles from town. My children. Eliza gasped. Safe, for now. Pierce wants the ledger, not dead babies. You are making a mistake. Probably. Would not be my first. The wagon stopped at Pierce's ranch. Eliza was dragged inside and thrown at the feet of Silas Pierce. He stood in the doorway of his grand house dressed in a silk robe like a king receiving a subject. Mrs. Hart, he said with a smile, so good of you to accept my invitation. Back in Riverbend, Caleb found the signs of struggle. The spilled wash water, the drag marks in the dirt, and a note pinned to the door. The ledger for your wife. Pierce Ranch, midnight. Come alone or she dies screaming. For 3 years, Caleb Hart had pretended he was no longer the surgeon. He had buried his guns and his badge and his past. He went to the locked drawer, opened it, took out the Colt .45. His hands did not shake. Tonight, he would remember why they gave him that name. Silas Pierce had broken harder women than Eliza Moore. But as he watched her spit blood on his expensive carpet and smile, he began to wonder if he had finally met one who could not be broken. The interrogation had been going on for hours. Eliza sat in a chair with her hands bound behind her. Her lip was split and her ribs ached from Victor Crane's enthusiastic questioning. But she had not given them anything useful. Where is the original ledger? Pierce asked for the 10th time. I told you, Eliza said. It is hidden. Somewhere you will never find it. Pierce nodded to Crane. The gunfighter stepped forward and backhanded her so hard the chair nearly tipped over. Stars exploded behind her eyes. I am a patient man, Pierce said. But my patience has limits. Tell me what I want to know, and this ends. Continue to resist, and I will let Crane have his fun. Eliza tasted blood. She thought about Emma's laugh, Thomas's serious eyes, Caleb's steady hands. She thought about Samuel's last words. Protect them, whatever it takes. You can break my body, she said, but you will never break my will. Pierce sighed. Very well. Crane, do what you do best. The next hour was pain. Crane was an expert. He knew how to hurt without causing permanent damage, how to push a person to the edge of consciousness without letting them escape into it. Eliza endured. She retreated into herself, into the memories of better times. Samuel's smile on their wedding day, the first time she held Emma and Thomas in her arms. Caleb's voice saying, "Let me protect yours." She held on to those memories like a drowning woman holds onto a rope, and she refused to break. Meanwhile, Caleb was preparing for war. He stood in his office loading weapons with the mechanical precision of a man who had done this 1,000 times. Rifle, pistols, ammunition, knife. "You are not going alone," Captain Pike said from the doorway. Caleb looked up. Pike was dressed for battle with his old cavalry saber at his hip and a rifle across his back. Despite his wooden leg, he stood straight and proud. "This is not your fight," Caleb said. "The hell it is not. I knew her father, Colonel James Holloway, finest surgeon in the cavalry. That woman in there is his daughter, and she is worth fighting for. You could be killed. Son, I should have died 20 years ago at Gettysburg. Everything since has been borrowed time. Let me spend it on something that matters." Mabel appeared behind Pike. She carried a shotgun with the ease of long practice. "I am coming too," she said. "That girl has been under my roof for months. She is family now, and we do not abandon family." Thomas Whitmore stepped forward last. He was pale and trembling but determined. "I know the ranch," he said. "Every entrance, every guard position, every escape route. You need me." Caleb looked at the four of them. An old soldier, a former prostitute, a frightened lawyer, and himself, a broken man who had spent 3 years running from his past. It was not much of an army, but it was all they had. "Let us move," he said. At Pierce's ranch, Eliza was running out of time. She had overheard the guards talking through the wall. "Hart is coming tonight. Pierce wants him alive, needs to know what he told the Rangers. And after they got the ledger, Crane could have his fun with her." She tested her bonds. They were tight but not impossible, if she could just reach the letter opener on the desk. The door opened. A young woman entered carrying a pitcher of water. She was thin and frightened with dark circles under her eyes. Clara Eliza whispered, "Whitmore's daughter." Clara set down the pitcher and leaned close. "My father sent word," she breathed. "They are coming at midnight. I can loosen your bonds. Get me something to cut with," Eliza said. "Then, get yourself to the kitchen and stay hidden." Clara hesitated. "You are not really a frightened widow, are you?" Eliza's eyes changed. The softness hardened. The fear became focus. "My father taught me to shoot before I could read," she said. "My husband taught me to heal. And the men who killed him taught me there is a time for mercy and a time for war. I have been merciful long enough." Clara brought a knife, small but sharp. Eliza cut through her bonds and retrieved her derringer from the bag they had thrown in the corner. 2 shots. She would need to make them count. She checked the chamber, took a breath. Let the mask she had worn for 6 months finally fall away. For the first time since Kansas, she was no longer Eliza Moore, the frightened widow. She was Eliza Hart, survivor, fighter, mother. And God help anyone who stood between her and her children. The clock struck midnight. Somewhere outside, a rifle shot echoed across the ranch. The battle had begun. A guard burst into the room. Eliza was ready. 1 shot through the heart, clean, efficient, exactly the way her father had taught her. She took his gun, his knife, his ammunition. Then she moved into the hallway silent as smoke hunting for the man who had ordered her husband's death. The last time Caleb Hart had killed a man, he had promised God and himself it would be his final time. Walking into Pierce Ranch with a gun in each hand, he knew that was one more promise he could not keep. The assault began at midnight. Pike's rifle took out the first sentry, a clean shot from 200 yards. The old soldier had not lost his touch. Caleb moved through the darkness like a ghost. He had spent 8 years learning to track and kill in the Texas wilderness. The skills came back to him like breathing. 2 guards at the main gate. He took them both before they could raise an alarm. 2 shots, 2 bodies. Behind him, Whitmore guided them through a side entrance he had used 100 times. Mabel covered their rear with her shotgun, steady and ready. They breached the compound. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Jake Reed's men came pouring out of the bunkhouse. Gunfire lit up the night. Caleb felt something hot graze his shoulder, but he did not slow down. He was not Caleb Hart anymore. He was the surgeon. Cold, precise, deadly. Every shot found its mark. Every movement was calculated. He had tried to bury this part of himself, but it had always been there, waiting. Pike fought beside him like a man half his age. The wooden leg did not slow him down. He had survived Gettysburg. He had fought Sioux warriors on the plains. A bunch of hired guns were nothing. Not bad for an old man with one leg, Pike shouted over the gunfire. Inside the house, Eliza was fighting her own battle. She moved from room to room, taking down guards with a combination of gunfire and blade work. Her face was bloody. Her dress was torn. But her eyes were clear and focused. She had one goal: find her children. She had overheard the guards mention a nursery on the second floor. That was where they were keeping Emma and Thomas, hostages to ensure her cooperation. She reached the stairs and started climbing. A guard appeared on the landing. She did not hesitate. The knife found his throat before he could shout. She kept moving. Another guard. Another body. Then she was there. A door at the end of the hallway. She could hear crying on the other side. She kicked it open. Emma and Thomas were in a crib. Alive. Unharmed. A single guard stood watch over them. "Get away from my children," Eliza said. The guard raised his gun. She was faster. The derringer spoke once. He fell. She gathered her babies into her arms and held them tight. For one moment, the warrior disappeared. She was just a mother, clutching her children, trembling with relief. "Mama is here," she whispered. "Mama is here. It is okay." Then footsteps in the hallway. Heavy boots, coming fast. Eliza grabbed the dead guard's rifle. She positioned herself between the crib and the door, ready for whatever came next. Jake Reed appeared in the doorway, gun drawn, eyes cold. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The children's cries seemed to affect Jake in ways Eliza had not expected. Something cracked in his face, a pain older than anything that had happened tonight. Crane's voice echoed from downstairs. "Reed, is she in there? Bring her out." Jake stood there, his gun aimed at Eliza, his finger on the trigger. Then he lowered his weapon. "Go," he said. "Back stairs to your left. I will hold them." Eliza stared at him. "Why?" "Because once I let a good man down, and those children deserve better than what I became." Crane appeared behind Jake, saw the lowered gun, understood immediately. "Traitor," he snarled. The guns blazed. Jake took 2 bullets in the chest, but he kept shooting until Crane fell. Then Jake collapsed against the wall, blood spreading across his shirt. "Go!" he gasped. "Now!" Eliza ran, down the back stairs, through the kitchen, out into the chaos of the night. Caleb found Jake minutes later. His former partner was slumped against the wall, barely breathing. "Jake?" "No." "You were right," Jake whispered. "To leave. I should have gone with you. Why did you not? Thought I was not worth saving. Was I wrong?" Caleb gathered him in his arms. "You just saved her. The children, you gave everything. Then tell them. Tell them I chose right. Once." Jake Reed died with those words on his lips. Caleb closed his eyes, set down his guns for just a moment, mourned the man his friend had been before the darkness took him. Then he picked up his weapons and went to find his wife. They met in the main hallway, both bloody, both exhausted, both alive. No words were needed, just a look that said everything. Then Silas Pierce appeared. He had been hiding while his men died, letting others fight his battles. But now he stood at the end of the hall with a shotgun aimed at them both. "You think you have won," he said. "The senator will send more men. This territory belongs to us. Always has. Always will." Maybe Eliza said. "But you will not live to see it. 3 guns, 3 people who had lost everything. A standoff with no easy resolution." Then a voice behind Pierce. "Drop it. Captain Pike." He had circled through the house. Now he stood behind Pierce with his rifle raised. Pierce spun. Both men fired. Both men fell. Eliza and Caleb rushed forward. Pike was on the ground, blood spreading from his stomach. Owen, Owen, stay with me. Stop wasting supplies, Pike whispered. A weak laugh escaped his lips. I was supposed to die 20 years ago at Gettysburg. Everything since was borrowed time. Eliza knelt beside him. You never told me you knew my father. Some things you have to earn. You earned it tonight. His hand found hers. Make it worth something. All this blood. Make it mean something. Captain Owen Pike died as the first light of dawn broke over the mountains. Eliza and Caleb held each other in the ruins. The twins cried somewhere nearby. Fire crackled in the outbuildings. They had won. It did not feel like winning. It felt like surviving. And sometimes that had to be enough. The first 3 days after the battle, Caleb did not sleep. The 4th day, Eliza found him collapsed at his desk and realized they both had healing to do. The kind that did not respond to medicine. Riverbend was changed by what had happened at Pierce Ranch. Some people celebrated. Silas Pierce had terrorized this territory for years, and now he was dead. Others were afraid of what might come next. The powerful rarely fell without consequences. Sheriff McCall arrived with a posse too late to help, but in time to document the carnage. Silas Pierce, Victor Crane, Jake Reed, Captain Owen Pike. A dozen hired guns. The survivors told their stories. Thomas Whitmore testified to everything he knew. Clara Whitmore was finally free. The ledger was handed over to U.S. Marshal Collins, who had been tracking Pierce's network for 2 years. It was exactly the evidence he needed. Warrants were issued. Senator Whitfield in Washington was placed under investigation. The whole corrupt network began to crumble, and Eliza Moore Hart was officially cleared of all charges. She received the news in Caleb's office. The twins were playing on a blanket in the corner. Emma was trying to stack blocks. Thomas was methodically knocking them down. You are free, the marshal said. The murder charge has been dropped. You are no longer a wanted woman. Eliza thanked him, shook his hand, watched him leave. Then she sat down and cried. She cried for Samuel, for everything they had lost, for the months of running and hiding and fear. Caleb sat beside her and held her hand. He did not try to stop the tears. He just let them come. The funerals were held a week later. Captain Pike was buried in the veterans section of the cemetery. Half the town attended. His gravestone read Owen Pike. He held the line. Jake Reed had no service, no mourners except one. Caleb dug the grave himself on a quiet hillside outside of town. He placed his old ranger badge on the coffin before closing it. You chose right, Jake, he said. At the end, you chose right. I hope that is enough. Life slowly returned to normal, or what passed for normal in a town that had survived a war. The practice reopened. Patients came with wounds and illnesses and the everyday problems of frontier life. Eliza worked beside Caleb, learning everything he could teach her. The twins grew bigger every day. Emma took her first steps. Thomas said his first word, documentatia. He pointed at Caleb when he said it. Caleb pretended not to notice how much that meant to him. But Eliza saw the tears in his eyes. One evening she found him struggling with a delicate suture. His right hand was trembling. The bullet he had taken during the assault had damaged the nerves. I cannot do the fine work anymore, he admitted. Not reliably. Then teach me, Eliza said. I will be your hands when you need them. Partners. Partners. That night they lay together in the darkness. Not touching, not yet, but closer than they had ever been. I was afraid, Caleb said, not of dying, of becoming what I was, of losing myself in the killing again. Did you, Eliza asked. I do not know. I did what needed doing, but I felt it. The old coldness, the efficiency. Part of me missed it. That part kept you alive, kept us alive. What if I cannot put it away again? Eliza turned to face him. Then I will help you. The way you helped me remember I was not just a widow running scared. We are not who we were before this. Maybe that is okay. Maybe we get to be someone new. She touched his face, felt the stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. He kissed her. Not the brief, chaste kiss from their wedding. This one was real, chosen, wanted. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, he said, I love you. I think I have since you told me your husband must have been an excellent teacher. I know, she said. I think I loved you when you picked up Thomas and did not know what to do with your hands. Outside, Riverbend slept under stars that did not care about human grief or human love. Inside, two people who had expected to die alone found something worth living for. 1 month after the battle at Pierce Ranch, Eliza Moore Hart stood on the platform where her journey began and realized she had finally stopped running. Riverbend had changed in the weeks since Pierce's death. His empire was being dismantled piece by piece. The ranch was sold to the families he had victimized. The bank came under new management. Mabel Garrison now ran the general store, turning it from a place of exploitation into a place of community. The doctor's office had a new sign, Heart and Heart Medical Practice. Eliza was officially training as Caleb's partner. Patients called them both Doc. The twins were walking now. Emma charged fearlessly at everything that caught her attention. Thomas moved more cautiously, always watching, always calculating. They were so different, and she loved them both beyond measure. Eliza was at the depot to pick up medical supplies when the train arrived. She watched the passengers descend, remembering her own arrival 6 months ago. The fear, the cold, the moment when her whole world fell apart. Then she saw her. A young woman stepped off the train. She was thin and pale with dark circles under her eyes. She clutched a small child against her chest and looked around the platform with an expression Eliza recognized all too well, hope dying before it had a chance to bloom. No one was there to meet her. Eliza walked over. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Do you have someone meeting you?" The woman's voice trembled. "He was supposed to be here. He wrote and said." She could not finish the sentence. She did not have to. Eliza took her arm gently. "Come with me. There is a warm boarding house down the street. Let us get you and your baby inside." As they walked, the woman looked at her with confusion. "Why are you helping me? You do not know me." "Someone helped me once," Eliza said, "when I had no one. This town taught me that strangers can become family." She smiled. "Welcome to Riverbend." That evening, Eliza returned home to find Caleb reading to the twins by the fire. Emma had fallen asleep in his lap. Thomas was fighting to stay awake, determined to hear the end of the story. She stood in the doorway watching them, her heart so full it ached. Caleb looked up. "You are crying," he said. "Happy tears. Is that a thing?" "It is now." Later, after the children were asleep, they sat together by the window. Snow was falling softly on Riverbend. The town was quiet and peaceful. "I need to tell you something," Eliza said. Caleb's expression turned worried. "What?" "I came here planning to use anyone I had to. Pierce. You. The whole town. I was angry and broken, and I did not care who got hurt as long as I survived. And now I cannot imagine life without this place. Without you." She took his damaged hand in hers. "You gave me back something I thought was gone." "What?" "Hope. Family. A reason to stop running." He pulled her close. "I love you, Eliza Hart. I love you, Caleb Hart." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, the fire crackled, and two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their lives built something new from the ashes. 1 year later, on Christmas Eve, the house was decorated with evergreen branches and candlelight. Mabel was in the kitchen bossing everyone around. Clara Whitmore, who now worked as their helper, laughed at something Thomas had said. Caleb sat by the tree stringing popcorn with Emma, who was almost 3 now. She asked him a question that made his heart stop. "Daddy, why do the stars come out at night?" It was the same question Billy used to ask. For a moment, the old pain surfaced, the grief that never fully went away. But this time he answered, "So we can make wishes, sweetheart. What do you wish for?" He looked across the room at Eliza. She sat by the fire with one hand resting on her swelling belly. 6 months along with their first child together, their family growing. "Nothing," he said. "I have everything I need." A knock at the door. Thomas Whitmore arrived with news. He was the mayor now, a good man finally free to be himself. "Senator Whitfield has been convicted," he said. "He will spend the rest of his life in the territorial penitentiary. It is over, truly over." Eliza took the letter. "Read it, then fed it to the fire." "You are not keeping it?" Caleb asked. "I do not need evidence anymore. I need peace." Later that night, after everyone had gone and the children were asleep, Caleb and Eliza stood at the window, watching the snow fall on their town. Somewhere a church bell rang midnight. "Merry Christmas, Caleb. Merry Christmas, Eliza." He put his arm around her. She leaned into him, and they stood together in the quiet dark. Two people who had survived the worst life could throw at them. Two people who had found love in the most unlikely of places. Some wounds never heal completely. They become scars, reminders of what you survived. Eliza touched her belly where new life grew and felt Caleb's damaged hand in hers. Scars, she decided, were just proof that you were strong enough to keep living. And living after everything was the greatest victory of all. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.